has more than one royal family.
Welcome back to another episode of Wrestle Dads. I'm Chip. These are my boys, Alex and Parker. Today's episode, we have a first for Wrestle Dads. He's a freelance photographer who has worked with companies like House of Glory, Bree Combination Wrestling, GCW, and even Wale Mania. Mr. RJ Adams, welcome to Wrestle Dads.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are good. Thank you for asking. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing okay. I've had a lot of stuff personally going on in the background, but things seem to be wrapping up in a better direction now. So I'm just feeling very good actually today.
Good to hear it. Glad things are on the positive side for you. That's always good news to hear. So to kick things off, we have to bring this up. During our research, we were looking through your portfolio and noticed you attended the GCW for the Culture in Philadelphia over WrestleMania weekend.
Yes, I did.
And we couldn't help but notice that the second picture you have of that event is of myself, the boys, and the producer of this podcast of us sitting front row. We thought that was pretty awesome. I don't know if you noticed that before we set this up or not, but upon our research, we noticed that and we just couldn't help it. And we figured we'd bring that up first thing first on this podcast. Did you know that going into this?
I actually did not. I always take pictures of anyone that seems like enthusiastic, and I'll throw that into, any sort of photo or gallery that I usually shoot.
Perfect. Yeah, we were sitting front row, and it seems like it was right before the show started. And yeah, we were just hanging out, and we just thought it was awesome that you found us, and we had to bring it to your attention. Like, thank you. You have us a lot of pictures during that portfolio. Sorry, it's pretty awesome. Thank you. So, Parker, you can go ahead and lead this one off.
Let's jump right into this. What was that made you want to get into not just photography but also wrestling photography?
Well, that's a little bit of a story. So basically, when I was all the way back when I was in high school, right? Like, there was a yearbook. I was on the yearbook committee, and they needed a photographer. And my sister had a little 35 millimeter Nikon camera, which, fun fact, I still have to this day, sitting in my closet. And so I shot around like pretty much for like a whole half a year in high school. So any events, like I shot a couple of things for prom. I shot a couple of things, the pictures for the yearbook and stuff like that. And it was unusual. Like the yearbook that we had, at least back then, I graduated in 2005. So that was that's some time ago, even for me. And pretty much it's just I was on the committee. I was shooting a little bit of everything, and it's the most cliche nerdist thing you can imagine. It's like, hey, so I'm a photographer for the yearbook, and I just never stopped shooting from that point. Like, I caught the bug. It hit me just right here, and I decided I was going to buy a digital film camera, a digital DSLR camera that was also a Nikon, a Nikon D80. That was my first digital SLR. And I was in college at the time, and had this thing where like you actually get like most of your tuition back if you had FAFSA. So I put some of that towards getting a camera, and then I started shooting here and there pretty much off and on. And I got the D90. Eventually, I had that for at least, I want to say at least 7 years, but I feel like I'm talking a little bit too technically right now, so I'm going to just fast forward a bit. A couple of years ago, I had a regular gig. I was shooting pay-per-view parties for a little Facebook group called Yep, I Like Wrestling. And like it's between like they were having parties all the time, and I get a little bit of money shooting for them, and it was just like it was the best atmosphere. You had a whole bunch of fans that were just eating and drinking, having fun, and those are always the best thing to shoot. Just anybody having fun where they don't notice the camera. And someone that I knew at the time, they were starting their own little wrestling company, and they'd seen my pictures, they loved my pictures, and they were, hey, so how do you feel about shooting my very first show? And I was just like, wow, I didn't know I was even well considered for that. So I was just like, hey, let's do it. And my first show was the very, very first Violence and Suffering show. Frank Lucas was there. If you know, what was that movie? American Gangster. That movie is pretty much all about him. And I was the very first show that I ever shot actually had the real life Frank Lucas just sitting there. He was hawking his own merchandise and his own gear. And who else was there? Leo Rush. Leo Rush was the very first match on the card. I shot him with someone from AEW. My name, the name is actually slipping. Oh no, it's Silver. I can't remember his whole name, but like, yeah, that's pretty much just how it went. And then I'd stopped doing it for a little bit just because, it's not a whole lot of money. And I had pretty much a full-time job. And then the pandemic, as everybody knows, changed everything.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing that happened, the second day of the year, I got let go from my job. I was working at Samsung at the time, and that turned out to be an opportune time for me. And then, as we know, everything got shut down, especially New York. New York being shut down was one of the eeriest things I can ever imagine. I would go out regularly to like Soho, and I would like shoot the empty streets, and like this was like 7, 8 o'clock at night. There's still always like a bunch of people out in Soho, just pretty much anywhere in the city, but there was nobody on the streets. It's the most bizarre thing, and it's just like I can't even imagine it happened in my lifetime. It's like something you see and like, oh well, this happened in the 20s when the Russian flu infected a whole bunch of people and some sort of something like that. But yeah, so pretty much what happened, as you know, we got a whole bunch of money just to sit home, and I didn't feel like sitting at home, so I decided to go out to Florida. My very first trip to Florida was during the pandemic, by the way. And I shot a whole bunch of deathmatch wrestlers, deathmatch guys for ICW, and yeah, and my stats kind of grew from there. It actually grew kind of quickly from there, only because it was like the only game in town if you want to do anything. But like that's pretty much how I got into the business proper, and then gotten all the way to shooting and cover PWI with Matt Cardona and Steph DeLander. I mean, super proud of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much to answer that question further.
No, you're good, man. Cardona and Steph DeLander, like those are some big names. Like that's awesome. So then how does freelance photography for wrestling work? Do you reach out to the companies? Do they reach out to you, or are wrestlers bringing themselves to you?
It's a combination of all of the above. Sometimes I'll reach out to a company if it's like someone, or if it's like a bunch of matches that I know is just, ooh, I really want to shoot that. So I'll reach out to the promoter directly, or like I'll DM them or reach out to them in person. Sometimes this will happen. A photographer promised that they'll shoot something, and then they can't make it for whatever reason. Then someone will hit me up. It's like, hey, so I said I'd do something, but I know that you're a really good photographer. You're not gonna make me look like a fool. So how about if you just go and shoot this, and I'll personally talk to the companies from there. I mean that's how I actually got the DPW gig in Ridgefield Park.
Okay.
Let me see if I remember who was originally going to shoot that. I believe it was Scott Lesh. Scott Lesh was originally going to shoot that, and something happened on his end. And he asked me, he's like, "Hey, so you free that day?" And yeah, and I remember that being a very good show. But in terms of just like being freelance, it's like, yeah, you have to do a lot of hustling on your own. I mean, although it's just like, I'm reasonably well seasoned. I mean, people know me, like, not to brag or anything to be braggadocious, but I've done a little bit, and people will ask me, it's like, "Hey, so you free? Are you doing this? Are you doing that?" And sometimes I have to turn them down if I'm booked up with one of my other obligations. But it's a fly by night sort of thing, just like anything else in the business. Like, like you'll see like a whole card announced, and then someone can't make it for whatever reason. Like that car is stuck in some snow, they crashed, and you have to make something happen out of thin air. I mean, it's usually not that dramatic for the photographers, but I try to make sure that I make all my gigs.
I gotcha. So, not to put you on the spot, but to kind of piggyback off what you were saying. So,
Yeah.
for the culture, was that your job from the start, or were you like an emergency photographer call up, like you were saying?
No, like that was a scheduled gig. Pretty much the person that had booked that particular show. Let me see. That was geez, like like names. But like person that was booking it, I had shot the show last year, and they were just fine with having me come through and having it doing again. And then I had to talk to the legendary old Gardner, and he's pretty much the head of photo operations for GCW, and pretty much let me know the lay of the land and what to do. He gave me final instructions before he went on his way, because I mean that dude had been shooting pretty much the entire week, so I'm pretty sure he wants his own little rest time. And so, I mean, I came through there, and for me, I love shooting for the culture shows, because it's always really good matches with severely underrated talent. And I feel good about being able to capture what they do, especially being black myself. I always like to show talent and elevate talent. I mean, because I mean that's my job as a photographer, simply to make people look good at what they're doing.
Right. I love it. Great answer so far, my man. I'm gonna pass this one on to my other son, Alex.
All right.
Do you remember what it felt like when you found out you'd have one of your photos published, and what was that picture?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the very first time I really got published was it was a spread with Casey Kirk, in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and that was pretty intense. Like that, it was very. I was told about that for at least a good month or two before the word actually got put out by PWI, and so it was like Casey Kirk, man. Like me and her artistically, it's just a very symbiotic type of thing. She tells me what she wants, I make it work. I say, up a certain shot that I have in mind, we all make it work. And it's like, yeah, I just really adore shooting her and working with her. And it was one of my honors to actually get her, to shoot her as one of the first like female deathmatch wrestling champions, especially in PWI, which they do not usually put any sort of deathmatch material in their magazines, especially on, at least not in the modern era. So that was actually it was a really big deal for me, and just a really big deal in general. I mean, I'm forever honored to have done that. And actually, that was one of the things I was able to show my pops. That's how I became a fan of wrestling. I started watching when I was 5. It was me and him. We would watch WWF at the time, Superstars and Wrestling Challenge on Sundays. So it was really cool to be able to show them, like, hey, so I got a picture of mine in the oldest wrestling magazine in existence, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Now with Casey Kirk, what you said that was a female death match. What wrestling organization was that with?
That was ICW.
ICW. Okay. That's awesome. It's kind of like segueing into my next question, so give me a second to figure out how. Now, was that the only published work you've had?
Oh no, actually, that's not the only published work. So I've had Casey in PWI, then I think the second one of the pictures got published twice because they did a year-end like a year-end recap for that year. But then I actually got the chance to shoot Matt Cardona and Seth Delander for their first cover, as well as my first cover of any magazine of any kind.
That's awesome. Now, do you remember how you felt like when your photo got picked for like all these situations? Like, I mean, that's got to be like a dream come true. You know what I mean?
I mean, like I'll be frank. There's I know a bunch of other photographers, and they're in far higher positions than I am, and they don't have anything published as a cover. I mean, of course, I don't say that to be just like, well, look at me, look at Red Shoes Media. It's pretty much like one of those things where just like things happen when they happen. You know that I of course want my work to be seen by as many people as I can, but like you can only do but so much to ensure that. But sometimes things just fall into place and into the right times, and then boom, it just happens. And then it's just pretty much up to you, just as the person has it in front of you, to decide if you're going to take that moment or not.
Sound like my producer. He says stuff like that to me all the time to give me confidence to do this. But yeah, man, I mean, PWI, that's one of, if not the top wrestling publications in the world. Like, that's amazing. Like, to be published in one of those, like, yeah, you're humble about it, but I'm giving you congratulations, man. That's awesome. Like,
I mean, thank you. I personally had I had a plan set for myself, like a 5-year plan. I wasn't expecting to even be noticed all that much until like my 3rd year, but like that didn't. Everything happened so fast.
yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. It's not you just got to be ready. Like, it's like that's what happens. Like, people that are ready for when moments happen, those are the ones who succeed. And you painted it perfect. Like, thank you. Like, I hope the boys learn that. If they learn anything from you, I hope it's that. Like, always be ready. Like, that's awesome.
It's like, yeah, you just got to seize the moment when you can. Pretty much, that's it.
Yep. All right, Parker, take it away.
Yeah, I've gotten to work with some of our favorite wrestling promotions like HOG and GCW. What are some of your favorite moments you have gotten to experience live while working?
Oh man, favorite, like being backstage, just like as someone that grew up in as a fan of wrestling. It's always like one of those, like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm here sort of thing. But then you have to pair that off with like, hey, so I'm here as a professional photographer, and I have to make sure that I have to get my people. I have to get certain shots. I have to make sure that they look good at the same time. And it's like, ooh, I guess one of my favorite moments actually would have been I think WrestleMania LA weekend. I actually I was there I shot for the culture there. That was one of my favorite ones because it was in the I don't know if you can remind me what's the venue that they typically shoot at in LA, GCW. The Ukrainian something or other.
Give me a second. My producer will chime in. We're not being rude. If I pick up my cell phone, it's usually him telling me how to hold the mic, or if I'm not looking at the camera long enough. So there you go.
Yeah, so the Ukrainian Cultural Center. So I was able to shoot for the culture at the Ukrainian Cultural Center, and that it's like I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it's a gorgeous building, so beautiful.
Yeah, never been there, but I've heard about it, and I mean the way that you talk about it, you're a photographer, so it must be beautiful. So
It was one of those things where like I shot that building and like I wanted to emphasize the grandeur of it. It's the high ceilings and then like the ornate sort of decoration of it all. But one of my favorite moments just being in that building was able to be in like up in the catacombs and able to steal some promo shots in some weird locations because it's part of it's kind of used as like a classroom, as like an educational facility. So there's some rooms that they have like chairs for students and all of that, and I got like a couple of like really cool promo shots in there. That was some of my favorite moments shooting for GCW, and then House of Glory. It's just there's so many people that go through those shows all the time.
yeah,
I think my favorite moment, it might have actually been the Murder Grandpa himself coming through, and I was able to snag a quick little shot of him before he got out. It was like super fast, and I had a little tiny light, this particular light. So it's this little LED light that I carry around sometimes if I need like a little bit of lighting in a quick pinch.
I carry this around now for like podcast reasons. If I got to do a tweet or whatever, you need the good lighting. It's just a little quick little quick light.
So I get yes, he's got this little bar right here, just like wow.
Oh yeah, yours is way better than mine. But I mean,
That's only like 70%. That thing is powerful.
Yeah, that looked awesome when you brought it up to camera. That's great. So backstage, WrestleMania LA weekend and House of Glory are your two favorite moments. Did I get those notes correctly?
That sounds pretty accurate to me.
Perfect. I'm working on my journalistic skills. So like I'm trying to listen to you as you speak and write down and try to keep up with everything. It's harder than what people think, to be honest, trying to host a podcast.
Your efforts are very well noted.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So while doing photography for a company, what kind of access do they usually grant you? Do you get to go in the ring, backstage, or are they pretty strict with where they want you to be?
It's one of those things where it just matters. I mean, what company that you're at the particular time. Some companies will recommend that you only be in a certain area, a certain section. Some will give you pretty much free reign. I mean, I for a while it was the free reign at ICW, so I could go. Like I would be one of the first people there, and then the wrestlers would come and trickle in. When they come and trickle in, and I grab one of those. Hey, let me get a promo shot, or let me get this, or like let me get this weird thing I have this idea for. And then there's other companies be like, hey, so we're gonna give you this credential, and then oh, you have a shirt. You have a personal shirt identifying riches. You're gonna need a shirt that recognizes the company, so they'll give you one of those. Again, it's one of those things that it depends by the company. Some companies are super strict. I mean, I was actually able to shoot a AEW show, so that was when Mercedes Moné debuted at the AEW. That was a way different experience because you had to go to the box office, you had to retrieve your ticket. And then I had to hunt down the people that, gave me access to the hard cam section. And I got that super, super early to the point where like the wrestlers are actually still, performing, trying to work out what their match is going to be in the ring. I don't think we got too many of those, but yeah, it was. It's one of those things where it's super different. If you develop a relationship, they'll give you more access, of course. If you are fly by night, if they have their own photographers without their own access, and you're just a visitor, and you just be nice to everybody, and then you just listen and don't step out of line, essentially.
I got you. Now, the last question we asked you what your favorite moment was, but you just said something pretty big. So you covered CEOs, come back to AEW. So would you say that's your biggest gig to date?
Thus far, yes. I was sent out there on behalf of PWI. They wanted to get some pictures of the debuting Mercedes Moné. And it was something that I definitely wanted to do because I was actually present at the takeover match of her and Bailey, which was it was one of the most incredible matches I've ever seen, male or female, live in a building. And then I'd met at the time the Sasha Banks in Jersey, and I have a picture of her, and like that she's one of my favorite women's wrestlers ever, just because of the magnitude of what she did at that particular takeover. So for me, it was very important that I'd shoot her entrance into AEW.
That's awesome. Yeah. She had one of the biggest moments. You're correct. The producer of this podcast talks about that often. Like Sasha Banks had one of the biggest moments in wrestling history. So
Absolutely.
I get why she's your favorite wrestler. And I mean, kudos, man. That's awesome. You personally called out to shoot for the CEO. Like I love her. Like the whole little CEO thing. It's starting to click. Like I like it a lot. But I'm gonna pass this one off to Parker.
All right, Parker.
Have you ever been taken out or accidentally hit by a wrestler while taking an action shot?
Now, it actually really personally hasn't happened to me as a photographer. I mean, I tend to be like super nervous just because I have a camera in my hand that's worth like, a bunch of money that I do not. I'm not one of those photographers that have like 2 and 3 camera bodies, as they say. So it's just like I just have this one camera, and if this one camera goes kaput, I'm gonna have to figure something out and get a new camera. So I try to stay away from that as much as I can. But I actually not too long ago did an informal poll from a bunch of my fellow photographers, and photographers have been hit quite a few times. I mean, I shoot like a lot of deathmatch stuff, and just randomly and things like that. Like I've gotten busted open at least one good time shooting that. Just I love shooting glass pane spots. It's just the method in which they. Matter of fact, this particular shot, this is one of my favorite shots of like glass pane breaking. It's it's probably one of my most important shots.
Can you bring the camera closer to that?
Oh, I'll just bring the.
Possible. Or can you bring it closer to the camera?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
This is Atticus Kogar and Shane Mercer. And it's like, this is one of my all-time favorite shots, and it got me like a lot of attention when I first got posted.
Yeah, I mean Parker knows who Shane Mercer is, so like
I was like,
yeah. I mean we've seen a lot of your. Like, sorry to make you take that off your wall, my man, but like, that's an awesome picture. Like, a lot of your work on Twitter is amazing, dude. And you do a lot of deathmatch work, like, and I give you kudos. Like you said, you took, I'm sure, glass to the face just to get this beautiful picture, correct?
Oh, like almost certainly. Like that show was that was Memento Mori. Memento Mori. I'm trying to remember the promotion. No Peace Underground. So No Peace Underground, Memento Mori. That was also the first trip that I went to in Florida. This was in January, like a couple of days after 2021, if I'm not mistaken. That's one of my all-time favorite shows I actually got to be at, and this is one of my all-time favorite shots, besides, of course, Casey Kirk.
Hey, it's a beautiful shot, my man. I see why you love it so much.
But in any case, it's just like, yeah, so us photographers get like, I mean, if it's people sliding, out of the ring right into the camera, I know like other people that have shot death matches, they actually have like huge scars on their arms from errant barbed wire they might have fallen into trying to capture some stuff. Like it's what we do is actually fairly dangerous. Again, especially for those of us that shoot death matches. I mean, you have like your gardeners and your grassos that have been doing this forever for like 10 plus years, and they know exactly where they have to be. It's just like they know the pattern of glass breaking and all that. And yeah, I mean it's yeah, people don't think about us little photographers, and the shots that we need to get just to go have people go, oh wow, this is amazing. I need to go to this show next time just to see that up close.
Yeah. Now, do you have to sign like an NDA or like any sort of like when you go to these? You know what I mean? Like an insurance
An
clause or
NDA.
what? You know what I mean?
I don't even want to know. No, you don't really sign an NDA. I've never really been far enough along in my career where I need to go to a company. It's like we just need you to sign this document just to say that you've seen nothing here. But it's pretty much just like a level of professionalism. You don't say everything that you see, just like anything else. Like I mean, that there's jobs that I've had, like actual real life shoot jobs that I signed NDAs for, and I cannot tell you about the amount of food that I personally had to dispose of.
Oh,
For instance.
I gotcha. Fair enough. Alex?
What brand of camera did you use and what made you want to choose that one?
Now, for me, like I was from the very first camera I ever got from my sister, that I shot like all those pictures for the yearbook. It was a Nikon, and I love Nikon. And even when I had upgraded from film to digital all the way back when I was in college, there was a little company called J&R back in the day in New York City. They're no longer existing, but pretty much they used to occupy a whole block of stores right across from City Hall in New York City. And I went to their photo store. They had like several different, you know, d- several different storefronts, let's say. And I went to their that little camera section, and they had these brochures. I think I still have at least like two of them. And they show me the brochure for the D80, and it's the usual stuff about of pelicans flying in mid-flight, and then there's Japanese models, looking like very well lit and gorgeous. It's like, and like those pamphlets always have you thinking. It's just like, I could do that with this camera. I should probably get an Nikon. And so that's exactly what I did. So I got the Nikon D80, the Nikon D90, and the current Nikon I have now is the D750. But I've always used Nikons. My contemporaries use Nikons. Me personally, I always like the way. For me, I love color. I love color in photography. I don't like this latest trend of like trying to take all the color out of it, making everything look flat, because it's especially for deathmatch photography. You have all these bright sort of shades of like blood, and then there's like the sort of the greenish blue of the glass, and it's all of that is there's a whole interplay going on of color and light and darkness that it's a constant thing that you have to sort of maintain just as a photographer. For me, my style, I like things a little bit moody. I don't like things necessarily 100% lit all the way, but that just depends on the company that you're trying to portray and what you're trying to shoot.
That kind of perfect segue into my next question. So my girlfriend's into photography, and I noticed that she has to take many single shots to get that perfect shot. So how many single shots do you normally take to make sure you capture that perfect picture?
Ooh. Well, this is going to be a brutal answer. So, I have talked to many of my contemporaries as a photographer, and I'm always constantly told it's just like, hey, so it's just like, what are you shooting with? And I was just like, well, I have two 256 gig memory cards. Like, what? What do you? I was just like, well, why are you overshooting like that? It's always like a visceral reaction. Like, in terms of a usual show, I'll shoot anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 images. It usually is on the higher end, especially for deathmatch photography, because I just find that deathmatch photography just shoots prettier to me.
I like it. So you are a multi-shot kind of guy. So you said 4,000 to 6,000. That's per show.
I was like, yeah, I mean, to go on the technicals of it, there's a couple of us that like using flash shooting shows. I do not. But if you don't use flash, you actually have the advantage of being able to fire off many different shots at once. Because the deal is, if you're using a flash, you have to wait for that flash to recycle its power. So if you take out the flash out the equation, you just have to wait for the camera shutter to do its thing, and it's still going to be much faster than waiting for your light to recharge, essentially. So doing that, it usually gets me the type of shots that I enjoy getting.
I gotcha. That's an awesome answer. Perfect. Alex.
What is your personal favorite work you've shot before?
I think my personal favorite shot that I've ever done in the wrestling business was the one that I shot at Casey, ICW Unlucky 13. So that's like the shot of like her backstage with just the blood face and just her looking furiously at the camera. That's easily my all-time favorite photo that I've ever taken in wrestling.
This one might be a little repetitive, but we're gonna shoot with it anyway. Parker, go ahead.
What about your favorite photograph of all time? One that you look at and it always seems to inspire you.
Ah, man. I don't really have like, like an all there's a couple of things that I think is like some of the coolest things ever shot. There's for one instance, there's a shot of Tina Turner where she's hanging off the side of the she's in Paris and she's hanging off of the Eiffel Tower, just like off of the edges of the Eiffel Tower, and just I think that's the coolest shot of anyone ever. And I certainly wouldn't have the let's say gumption to risk anybody. It's like, hey, so I'm going to need you to hang off the Eiffel Tower. It's going to look really cool, but I just really need you to risk your life for me so we can get this shot. And like that feels like that would be an insane ask of anybody. But for me, I find myself most inspired by shots of old Hollywood, old like glamour shots, old album covers. Actually, to be fair, I think one of my all-time favorite images is the Madonna True Blue album cover. That was shot by Herb Ritz. And there's something about that shot that just screams iconography. Because to me, I tried to not just shoot photos. I try to shoot photos that people will be remembered for. Like iconography, like something that will be quoted, 5, 10, 15 years from now. Like this is one of the ideal photos that's always going to be used, There's usually a couple of photos of any sort of like mainstream personality that's like considered iconic. That's what I'm trying to aim for. I don't want mediocrity to represent me, RJ Adams, or Red Shoes Media.
Right on. So, what are the origins of Red Shoe Media? Is this like a New Japan referee reference, or did you just come up with this all on your own?
Well, I mean, it's a mix. Admittedly it's a mix. When I had mentioned before to you guys that I'd shot the first VXS show, Violence and Suffering show. And I was trying to figure out, what I was going to call myself. So originally I called myself Roger Adams Photography. So that's my real name, Roger Adams. But to me, I always felt like Roger Adams, that could be anybody. Like what is that? you know. But I feel like any good artist has to produce some sort of enigma, to, at least, you know, just to represent themselves, just to not have them seem like just a regular person in the crowd. So, I mean, I already loved red sneakers. There was I was always shooting with these Jordans that I got, these Jordans 11s that I got, the Win Like 96s. So I was rocking with those for like a very long time, shooting pay-per-view parties like I had mentioned before. You know, I was still kind of known as Roger Adams Photography, but then it was pretty much when I got let go in 2020 from my job at Samsung. I had all this time and all this money, and then just, you know, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. It's not like, you know, I could just, you know, go to Atlantic City and just gamble or, you know, all this money that I got. So you just had all this quiet. The streets were quiet. Like the only thing you heard were just, you know, sirens of people going to hospitals for various reasons. And, you know, you just have time to think. And then it's just like, well, I have all these red shoes, and as the red shoes ref from Japan, and, you know, you just kind of want to make yourself seem more like a myth, and then just a photographer. So you just kind of lean into it. And then I just printed up some merch. I printed up. I was walking around with some masks that I had printed up from this little website. I just Red Shoes Media. I was going around shooting shows, and it was all really based around a level of demarcation for me as a photographer, because I believe that people are kind of weird in this business. And so it's just like I have my family, you know, I have my friends, and then there's everybody else. So I don't want certain things contaminated by certain nonsensical things from the business. So I decided a while back I was going to keep a level of demarcation in between that. So I mean, people know me as in the business RJ Adams, and I like to keep it that way.
I like it. The enigma is a perfect. I like it.
Yeah.
Alex?
As a freelance photographer in the wrestling industry, what are some of your future goals you would still like to accomplish?
I mean, I would definitely like to shoot some bigger events for AEW. I mean, of course, there's WWE. I mean, I would love to be able to shoot a WrestleMania. I mean, that's like the goal. I mean, I know people that shoot for WWE currently, and like their work is beyond stellar. Like, you know, I mean, I don't want to straight up say I'm jealous of their work, but like what they do, and the level of access they have just allows them to provide such great imagery to the public. And, you know, I'd be lying a little bit if I, you know, said if I wasn't a little bit jealous. But it's I always believe energy like that, just like, you know, like, yeah, like I could say that I'm jealous about certain people, but it's just like I'm not trying to tear anybody down. I'm not trying to, like, you know, bury anybody on at any levels. Like, the photographers that I've come across are amazing. I wish no ill will from them at all. I'll root them on no matter what. At the same time, it's just like everybody's trying to, you know, get their shot. They're trying to get their shot at immortality, just like everybody else. You know, but actually, repeat the question for me one more time. Actually, like, I just want to make sure I'm on task.
Fun.
As a freelance photographer in the wrestling industry, what are some of your future goals you would still like to accomplish?
Okay, so yeah, I mentioned.
Seemed like you were doing pretty good.
I was like, yeah, I just want to, you know. I was like, yeah, I definitely mentioned WrestleMania. I definitely want to shoot one of the bigger, some of the bigger AEW events. I also definitely want to start traveling, going overseas, going to the UK to shoot a lot of their deathmatch stuff. Just like I love the scene over there in the UK. I eventually want to go to Australia because they have a great deathmatch scene over there. And interestingly enough, shooting shows in Brooklyn, I've had people that visiting from Australia to say to me directly that they felt directly inspired to be a wrestling photographer because they saw my work in the United States, which is, to me, that's incredibly heavy. That's incredibly heavy. That's like when someone walks up to you, it's like, hey, so I saw what you did, and I felt inspired to try to replicate that in my homeland. That's ooh, that really touched me. That really touched me.
I can imagine, man. That's awesome. That's inspiring is like the best word that eh, for anything. Like that's I hope I do that for my young ones here. Like I hope they take a lot of what you're saying. That's why I hope you take no ill will of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to listen to everything you say, take notes. I'm going to be putting in my notebook later on. And when they get older and ready to train for wrestling, like a lot of what they're learning right now from you, I appreciate it. So thank you.
And that's one of the other things. Like once I realized that people were actually like looking towards what I was doing and felt inspired. Like actually, I take that seriously. Like I love the idea of inspiring more artists and new artists to practice their craft. I mean, because especially as a black person that's a photographer and an artist, it's just like there's never like especially in wrestling and behind the scenes and as a photographer. I mean, there's a couple of people that have pushed, but you don't hear about them a whole lot. So it's just you have to decide. I mean, for me, I had to decide I had to make my own path. And it's just like I'm kind of making it up as I go, but people seem to be responding to it pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, I love the path that you've taken so far. I know a lot of people do. So I hope you continue doing what you're doing, my man. You do awesome work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So let's loosen up a little bit as we wind down this episode and let's have a little fun. So we had a couple serious questions. Now let's have a couple little goofy questions and let's find out what RJ Adams prefers. All right.
All
So
right.
let's start with breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
I was like, I definitely like to start my day with more of a lunch than a breakfast. Like that kind of goes for me from high school. I didn't end up usually eating like breakfast just because I was just kind of a weirdo that way. I still don't kind of eat breakfast on a regular basis. I usually end up starting for lunch.
I gotcha. So it seems to be a common thing, a brunch. I think that's why brunch comes together. So, and to piggyback off that, what's your go-to meal? Number one meal choice. If gun to your head, what's your favorite meal?
Oh, gun to my head, I definitely like steak with mashed potatoes or rice. Like that. That would always be my go-to.
Steak, mashed potatoes, and rice. I love it. Parker?
The Office, Walking Dead, or Law and Order.
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite hear you.
The Office, Walking Dead, or Law and Order.
Hmm. I think I'll go for the Walking Dead out of those three shows. I like zombies.
I like it. Perfect answer.
South Park, Simpsons, Family Guy, or Bob's Burgers.
Ooh. I grew up on this. I grew up on The Simpsons. I also grew up on Family Guy. Like out of those two shows. Like I mean, they've kind of dictated my personality and my sense of humor, low key. But if in this instance, gun to my head, I'll go with The Simpsons.
Nice. Going with the old school. I love it. All right. So last one. Bloodsport, Brooklyn. Are you going?
I mean, like I'm shocked that they're even doing one in Brooklyn so soon after Philly. I kind of have to be there.
Were you there for the one in Philadelphia too?
I actually was not there for the one in Philadelphia. I might have been at another show at the time, probably another probably NFC show at the time. But I don't think I've actually been to one of those.
Oh man, we were at the one in Philly, and I'm telling you, if you got the chance, I mean, you're in Brooklyn now, correct, or close to it?
Correct.
Uh, if you can make it, my man, it's well worth it. Whether you're doing your picture thing or not, it's well worth it. Like Bloodsport is one hell of a show. Like it is awesome.
As I know, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that live. I mean, no matter if it's just like if I'm there as a fan or if I'm just snapping away.
I love it. And I just want to thank you for playing that little like fast round we like to call it with our guests. And now it's time for our Chef's Kiss Award, aka Best Match of the Week award. But this week we're mixing it up a little bit and we're gonna make it a topic of what's your favorite match of all time that you've seen?
Ooh, like man, it's you guys talking such absolutes. I guess if you had to put a gun to my favorite match of all time is probably Stone Cold versus Bret Hart, WrestleMania 13.
Awesome answer. I love Stone Cold. My producer loves Bret Hart. So
Bret Hart's my all-time favorite wrestler. I have his signed autobiography. I've met the man twice. I love Bret.
that's awesome. Why? What most about him do you like made you like him? You know what I mean? Did I word that correctly?
To me personally, it's a very old school thing. Like I used to see Bret Hart, and like he was like the old school face, and like I felt like if Bret Hart did something or endorsed something, it was automatically good and correct and right.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, when he hated America, I kind of low key agreed with him at the time.
Yeah,
That's how much I love Bret Hart.
he was believable, man, and he believed in everything technical. He believed in wrestling and the respect behind it. Like he was so big on it. I loved it. That was a great answer, my man.
It's like, and here's I have a hot take about Bret Hart in the Attitude Era.
Go ahead.
Like you can't really have Bret Hart. Like you can't have the beginnings of the Attitude Era without Bret Hart. He did a whole bunch of just things that no one has ever done or since. He had that one promo. He shoved Vince McMahon down and he cursed him out while there was breaking down the old blue cage, and it was fully uncensored at the time. And as a kid, it was just like what is going on? And then Bret makes some sort of a reference later on to the happy kids here barebacking his way to a championship reign. There's a lot of stuff that's in those 97 Raws that's really that's even too edgy for right now.
Yeah. No, it really is, man. Like I watch old wrestling all the time, and that's like what I do before I go to bed. And sometimes I can't go to sleep because I'm like, oh my God, like this is what they had on TV 25 years ago. Like
Yeah.
how am I watching wrestling now? It's like, how did they get away with some of this stuff?
And we all watched it as kids.
Yeah, we all did, man. It was awesome. So Bret Hart was your favorite wrestler growing up and got you. Stone Cold was mine. So that's awesome that you brought this up. So Stone Cold's who got me hooked.
Now, if I was like a little bit younger, I'd probably would have told you Stone Cold. Like that's one of my best friends of all time. His best wrestler is Stone Cold.
Yeah, I mean, we're about the same age. I graduated in 06. So like you're just a little older than me. But yeah, I don't know what it was. Like the whole character I fell in love with. Like I loved Stone Cold. But all right, so pretty much to wrap up the show, I'll give you a couple minutes. Where can people find you? Are you promoting anything going on right now?
I mean, well, not immediately. I mean, I'm just kind of legitimately kind of sorting out like things in my life. I mean, I just recently got a brand new job. I'll be that's a brand new shoot job, so it's being a photographer is not all that glamorous. I'll be straight up with you. in terms of being a freelancer. But it's just you just kind of like get your name out there, get seen. If you try to sell a couple images, sell a couple of books, that's a good thing. But if you want to find me, you could go. I have a website, of course. It's redshoes.media. There's no .com or anything. If you want to put a www in the beginning, you could do that too. But you could just type in redshoes.media, and it'll direct you to my webpage, and you could see a ton of my old photos and all that fun stuff. You can also go to my Instagram. That's redshoes media, red.shoes.media. And I also have a Twitter that's just all one word, Red Shoes Media.
All right, perfect. Then thanks again, RJ Adams, for coming on. And all of you listening, go ahead and check out RJ Adams on X or Twitter at Red Shoes Media, or check out his website at redshoes.media or his Instagram at red.shoes.media. Did I get that all correct, sir?
You did. You nailed it.
All right, perfect. Working on my note-taking skills, so I'm glad you're noticing. So, all right, perfect. So to end the show, we're gonna do our plugs. You can find everything at WrestleDads.com. That's our link tree. It has all of our links that we got going right now. We got shop.WrestleDads.com. You can buy the shirts that you've been looking at the last hour. Wrestling is real. People are fake. We do these exclusive shirts. So if you check that out at shop.WrestleDads.com, and everything at WrestleDads Pod. We got TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter X. Again, at WrestleDads Pod, all one word. And the boys have their own tags. I usually give them time to give them their plugs. So
You can find me at the Boys A90 on TikTok with a capital T at the beginning.
And Parker.
Find me at Parker from Wrestle Dads. No spaces, and please subscribe.
And again, everything at WrestleDads Pod on TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter. And again, RJ Adams, Red Shoes Media. Thanks again for coming on WrestleDads. This was awesome. I hope you had a good time. And we'll keep in touch and keep taking awesome pictures, my man.
Thank you guys so much. This was a blast even doing this.
And all right, well, I think that's all we have for you on this episode of Wrestle Dads. You can follow us on Twitter at WrestleDads Pod. For audio purposes, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, and iHeartRadio. For video purposes, you can find us on YouTube and TikTok. Just search Wrestle Dads. You'll find us. And if you like what you're hearing, please rate 5 stars and hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Peace.
Scissor me!